We have plenty of NHL news to discuss today, including Toronto Maple Leafs forward Alexander Kerfoot, who's been suspended. Toronto Maple Leafs new head coach Sheldon Keefe finally has his contract in place. Plus, we have some NHL trade rumors on a variety of teams, including the Oilers, the Senators, Wild, and Sabres. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news and rumors to discuss today here, and I want to kick things off with the Toronto Maple Leafs and their suspension to forward Alexander Kerfoot, who's going to be out for 2 games following a boarding call against Colorado Avalanche defenseman Erik Johnson. So, of course, as we know, the other night the Maple Leafs were playing the Avalanche. Of course, they recently had a big trade this past offseason, so there was many players playing their former clubs for the first time. So it was certainly a very entertaining hockey game. Lots of emotions probably on both sides due to the the fact that these guys were going against their former teammates for the first time. Now, in this play, basically Erik Johnson was rushing back towards the boards in his own defensive end to gather the puck, where Kerfoot come from behind him, gave him didn't look like a vicious shove, but still shoved him enough to send him awkwardly into the boards, which is definitely the definition of boarding. Resulted in a penalty, of course, on the play, but it's also resulted in supplementary discipline here to the Leafs forward. Now, of course, basically the explanation from player safety makes a lot of sense. This is not a situation where Erik Johnson kind of went in and turned, put himself in a vulnerable situation at all. Kerfoot basically, could have come from behind him. The fact that his hands were on him wasn't so much of an issue. Could have kind of steered him in, or just kind of guided him into the boards, would have been a lot better. But it was a really dangerous spot, just a few feet out from the boards. They're both going at pretty good speed, and the shot that he gave him, the shove, just kind of sent him into the boards very awkwardly. Now, it sounds like during the hearing with player safety, Kerfoot, in defending himself, kind of said it looked like Johnson basically lost his footing a little bit as he started to turn a little bit, which is kind of true, but still he wouldn't have corralled himself into the boards at that kind of force if it wasn't for Kerfoot shoving him in. So clearly this is a case where supplementary discipline was justified. Of course, Alexander Kerfoot does not have any kind of history of suspension or fines during his time in the NHL, so they have given him a 2-game ban, and based on everything that's gone down with this and comparables in the past, I think 2 games is a fair decision. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. If you haven't seen the play or you haven't seen the news release from NHL Player Safety, I will put a link to the Player Safety video in the description down below so you can go ahead and check that out. Now, staying with the Leafs here momentarily, brand new head coach Sheldon Keefe finally has his contract in place as a new contract for a head coaching job with the Toronto Maple Leafs at the NHL level. Of course, most of you likely know that Keefe has already been working with the organization for a number of years as their coach at the American Hockey League for the Toronto Marlies. Because he was already an employee of the organization and he was already under contract with the Marlies, they did not have to rush and get his contract in place the same day he was hired, like we quite often see when you see like a newcomer coming in to take over the coaching duties, who's an external party, an outside the organization type of candidate, but this was not one of those scenarios, so it was a little bit different. They could take their time. It was a 3-year contract to Keefe signed here with the Leafs, which is pretty standard for first-time head coaches, so he's officially signed to his NHL deal. Not quite sure of the terms, exactly what he's getting paid. That's the type of thing sometimes isn't always made public, especially when it comes to coaches and executives around the NHL, but at least we do know he's off to a great start. First couple games have looked much better. The team looks to be pretty happy, pretty loose, playing a good style of the game. I do think the Leafs are likely going to try to make a few upgrades before we reach the trade deadline, but I think they're going to kind of be patient here and take things a little bit slow. Kyle Dubas can kind of breathe easy a little bit and see what they have now, if they can hopefully get this team healthy and performing to its full capacity here before they really can evaluate what they need moving forward. Now, as I mentioned, we have some other NHL trade rumors to discuss today involving 3 or 4 other teams. I want to kick things off, first of all, with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Oilers have had themselves a big weekend here with a couple of big wins back-to-back. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl both looked completely exhausted last night. They both played over 4 minutes of the 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime. It was a really fun overtime to watch. And they were completely gassed, couldn't get the job done, but they did get the job done in the shootout. And the Oilers are, sitting in a pretty good spot here, much clearly improved over last year. I know myself, I thought they would be better, but I wasn't sure they would be this better. But the team is doing quite well. New head coach Dave Tippett's got them rolling pretty good. Leon and Connor have put the team on their backs and kind of really taken off here. Of course, defenseman Oscar Clefbaum, Darnell Nurse, and Ethan Bear, other guys in the blue line, have been a big part of their resurgence here as well. The one thing, though, that the Oilers do want to add is another center iceman, preferably somebody who can play that number 3 center type of role. The latest article I was reading around Oilers trade rumors indicate that they're looking probably at a few players. Going to boil down to price, though. The 3 candidates that this article listed was Jean-Gabriel Pageau of the Ottawa Senators, Joel Eriksson Ek of the Minnesota Wild, and Matthew Perreault of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, any or all of those players may or may not become available. It's not quite clear. In the form of Pageau with the Senators, he's having a wicked start, and considering he's still relatively young enough that he could be a big part of their rebuild, many believe that the Senators are going to try everything in their power to get him re-signed to some sort of a longer-term deal before the NHL trade deadline. So he may not even become available. If they do move him, I think it'll be last minute at the deadline if they can't get him signed. But I do think it's their full intention to get him signed and keep him around to kind of lead this team and be a leader for them into their rebuild. So I guess we'll see in the form of Joel Eriksson Ek with the Minnesota Wild. That I could see possibly being something that could work out for them. I don't think the price tag would be too high. We know Bill Guerin's been kind of wanting to go into a rebuild mode, but it's been taking his time. So we're not quite clear exactly what he's going to do as of yet. There's been a variety of players on the Wild roster that have been discussed in trade rumors before, including Eriksson Ek, so I can certainly see that being a possibility as well. And I can see, him being sort of a fit for what the Oilers are looking to add. Now, in the case of Matthew Perreault with Winnipeg, I think it's really going to boil down to whether or not the Winnipeg Jets are trending towards being a playoff team or not. Before the season started, I would have thought Matthew Perreault was one of those players that very well could have been a cap crunch victim and very well could have been traded. But given everything the team has gone through and the uncertainty, especially with Buffalo on the back end, there's still some uncertainty, some question marks in Winnipeg. I don't think they're going to be rushing to make too many moves here. But if Winnipeg's in a playoff spot, I can see Perreault not going anywhere and being with the team to kind of help service them in their playoff needs. So I guess it boils down to it, though. If they fall out of contention and it looks like they're going to miss the playoffs, then Matthew Perreault absolutely becomes a highly likely tradable asset for the Winnipeg Jets. So certainly something to keep your eyes on. As we mentioned before, the Oilers are doing relatively well, but if they can add a number 3 center who can have a little bit more of an offensive output than what they currently have on their roster, then I do think it's something that they want to do, and these are some of the targets that they're apparently interested in, but a lot of it's going to really boil down to price, and are these players going to be available as we get closer to the trade deadline? Now, staying with the Ottawa Senators, of course, we talked about Pageau and the possibility of being re-signed. It is the belief that NHL insiders are thinking that Pageau likely would want to remain there if the deal can be done properly, if it meets what he's looking for, and the Sens would be interested in keeping him around as well. And according to Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun, he's also indicated that he believes the Senators are looking for some help on defense. They've run into a lot of variety of issues right now on the blue line, and they might be interested in picking up somebody probably on a shorter-term deal, not somebody they'd have to commit to long term, but they've ran into a few issues on that blue line with some injuries. Christian Wolanin's still going to be out for a little while longer. Branston's got our injury now, but he's not going to be out longer term. Zaitsev had to go back to Russia to deal with a personal matter. I think he should be back this week, I do believe. So they have a lot going on there, and maybe some help on the blue line might be something to look to. They've had a bunch of call-ups from their AHL affiliate in Belleville, who didn't do too bad between Max Lajoie, Christian Yaros, etc. So we'll see. I'm personally not sure that they would actually go ahead and make any kind of big trade at all in the blue line. It would be something very, very minor. You either dip into, a veteran who might be out there as a free agent, possibly, or maybe bring in somebody who's, kind of like your third pair type of defenseman who could go up and down between AHL and NHL just to have some extra added depth. But really, if they can get everybody healthy, they really don't need help on the blue line. And considering they're not really expected to be a team that's expected to contend this year, I wouldn't really be spending much in the way of assets to make many acquisitions. But given all that, the Senators are certainly doing better than many expected to do. They've had a nice little winning streak here. I believe they won 4 of their last 5 games. They've certainly moved up in the standings. Can they sustain that? Not going to be easy by any means, but still, they had a good stretch of games here in the last couple of weeks. We'll see if they can continue that, or whether or not they make some minor additions moving forward. But if they do make trades, I think they're looking for deals like they've already done here with like Anthony Duclair, Vladislav Nemestikov, those type of trades where they can maybe get a player who's maybe not doing the best on a short-term contract, cheap price to make the acquisition, and see if they can rehabilitate them into something that can at least be a short-term help and possibly even long-term if they get the right deal. As I mentioned as well, we want to talk quickly about the Buffalo Sabres. They're a team we've mentioned off and on here over the past few weeks. As we mentioned before, the Sabres got off to a good start and really haven't been doing so well lately, and they clearly need some help for some of their top players. Now, TSN insider Darren Dreger is reporting that he believes Jason Botterill is open to just about anything right now, and that he's had conversations with about 10 or 12 teams. Now, Dreger could not report specifically on which teams or exactly which players that he might be targeting right now, but they're looking for help at the forward position. More than one forward likely, something they would like to do if possible. Probably looking at one, probably two would be more likely what Botterill would want to do. And he's been having plenty of conversations, like I said, about 10 or 12 teams with a variety of players kind of in the mix. But the belief is, a lot of people know that the Sabres are kind of in a situation where they're kind of somewhat desperate looking for help. I mean, because of injuries and because of other guys not performing and the losing skid they've been on, other teams might not wanting to be taking advantage there and might want to kind of make them wait and try to get more of a price tag later. Clearly, when you're trading a position of weakness like they are currently, other teams can kind of try to take advantage and make the price tag a little bit more than you might want to spend, which is likely why we haven't seen a deal as of yet for the Sabres to make an acquisition. But there's lots of chatter going on. Like I said, not really sure who exactly they're targeting, but there's all kinds of forwards that we've talked about throughout the season that likely could be available and could be swapping jerseys before the NHL trade deadline coming up in February. So something certainly to monitor quite closely, especially if the losing continues in Buffalo. They're going to want to kind of stop the bleeding and get things back on track, and a shake-up at the forward position would certainly go a long ways, especially where they've run into a fair bit of injuries now as well. They need some players in there that can score and support their top guys like Jack Eichel and Jeff Skinner. They need some more help if they're going to continue to be a playoff contender for the current season. So that is all your news updates for today. Of course, as always, we'll know your thoughts and opinions and everything we discussed down in the comments section. So let me know what you think, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.